Welcome back to the DevOps Interview Series Most Asked Questions Part 2. In this video, we are diving straight into real-time deployment failures and how to troubleshoot them effectively. These aren't just theory. They are scenario-based questions pulled straight from real interviews. If you have missed part 1, link to that is in the description below. So make sure to check it out first, then come back for part 2. So let's get started. Okay, here's a classic one. Deployment fails because of missing permissions. And the interviewer asks you, how would you troubleshoot and rectify this deployment failure related to permissions? Here's how you would answer it. I would start by checking the deployment logs to see what's exactly being blocked. Then I would review the user roles and RBAC settings, which is role-based access control in Kubernetes, to make sure the right permissions are in place. If needed, I would also work with infra and security team to fix the access and try the deployment again. Here's another common one. The deployment process throws error related to secrets or sensitive config data. And the interviewer asks you, how would you handle this deployment failure and ensure secure handling of secrets? Here's how you would answer it. I would start by reviewing the deployment configuration to check how sensitive data like password, API keys, or tokens are being handled. I would make sure they are stored securely using Kubernetes secrets or tools like Vault. If any secrets are misconfigured or missing, I would update the deployment manifest to reference the correct ones and reapply the deployment. Okay, here's one related to network. The deployment fails due to network connectivity issues between application components. And the interviewer asks you, how would you diagnose and resolve this deployment failure related to connectivity? Here's how you would answer it. I would first check the connectivity settings in the cluster to make sure the app components are allowed to talk to each other. Then I would use tools like kubectl, exec, and ping to test if the pods can connect. If there's still an issue, I would check for any firewall rules or network policies that might be blocking the traffic. Moving on to the next, we have the deployment process failing due to insufficient disk space or storage capacity. And the interviewer asks you, how would you address this deployment failure caused by the disk space constraints? Here's how you would answer it. First, I would check the disk usage using commands like df-h or inside a pod using kubectl exec pod name --df-h. Then I would look for the larger logs or temporary files and clean them up with something like kubectl exec, the pod name --rm-rf, the folder or file name. If the space is still not enough, I would scale up the storage by increasing the size of persistent volume or create a new one depending on the setup. Moving on to the next one, we have the deployment failing due to compatibility issues between application components and external dependencies. And the interviewer asks you, how would you handle this deployment failure caused by compatibility issues? Here's how you would answer it. I would review the application's dependencies and external integrations to identify any version mismatches or compatibility issues. If necessary, I would update the application code or configurations to ensure compatibility with the required dependencies. To avoid this in the future, I would use version pinning or proper dependency management. Okay, moving on to the next one, we have a DNS issue. So, the deployment process encounters errors related to DNS resolution or domain name configuration. And the interviewer asks you, how would you troubleshoot and resolve this deployment failure associated with the DNS issue? Here's how you would answer it. I would verify the DNS settings and domain configurations in the Kubernetes cluster to ensure that the application's host name or ingress routes are correctly configured. If the DNS resolution fails, I would check the DNS server settings and network configurations to identify any misconfigurations or connectivity issues. Additionally, I would test with NSLOOKUP to diagnose and rectify the problem. Okay, here's one with environmental variables. The deployment fails due to conflict or inconsistencies in the environmental variables or configuration settings. And the interviewer asks you, how would you address this deployment failure related to configuration inconsistencies? Here's how you would answer it. I would check the deployment config and environmental variables to find any mistakes or conflicts. If something's wrong, I would fix the config files or update the variable values. Before redeploying, I would also double check the changes either manually or with config tools to make sure everything looks good. Okay, here's one with the connectivity issues. The deployment process fails due to timeout or connectivity issues with external services or APIs. And the interviewer asks you, how would you troubleshoot and rectify this deployment failure related to external dependencies? Here's how you would answer it. I would check if the cluster can reach the external services by testing network routes and firewall rules. I may use a command like kubectl exec port name dash dash ping externalservice.com. If those services are down or unreachable, I would inform the right teams and suggest them adding some retries or fallback options in the app. I would also keep an eye on their status and performance to catch issues early in the future. Moving on to the next, here's one with the certificate issues. The deployment fails due to misconfigured or invalid SSL certificate for HTTPS communications. And the interviewer asks you, how would you handle this deployment failure associated with SSL certificate issues? Here's how you can answer it. I would check the SSL certificate is valid and matches the app's domain with the OpenSSL command. If it's expired or misconfigured, I would replace it with a valid one from the trusted CA. Then I would make sure the ingress controller is set up correctly for HTTPS and SSL termination. Maybe I can use a command kubectl describe ingress name. Okay, here's one with the port conflict. After deploying a microservices app, auth-service and user profile service both crash due to unexpected port conflict. And the interviewer asks you, how would you troubleshoot and resolve this issue? Here's how you would answer it. I would check the service config to see if both are trying to use the same port. This can happen if the containers use shared config files or values with the same default port. I would review the deployment YAMLs or Helm charts to make sure each service has its unique container and target port. To fix it, I would assign different ports to each service, making sure they run in separate pods, and update the config before redeploying it. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching part 2 of our real-world deployment failures Q&A. Hope these scenarios help you in your interviews. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more real-world DevOps Q&A. We will be back with more tricky DevOps challenges, so stay tuned.